Welcome to The Creatives, Radio Now's entertainment talk show. My name is Doris Okorie. You'll be listening to us every Friday at 9:05 a.m. and repeats at 8 p.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos and also on our other platforms on our website www.thisisradionow.com, on Facebook, facebook.com/thisisradionow, and on YouTube, Radio Now Studios. Now, let me tease my guest. Today in the studio, I have a very interesting guest. I'm super excited. I have with me in the studio the executive vice president of one of the leading cinema chains in Nigeria. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on this one. But first, you know how we do. Entertainment News Roundup. Let's go! He is a senior executive with over 18 years experience covering finance, hospitality, cinema, and entertainment, who is known for accurate forecast of industry trends, innovation, strong execution capabilities, innate ability to build and maintain strong networks. Welcome, Mr. Opeyemi Ajayi. Thank you so much, sir, for coming.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so are you ready?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So because we know you do a lot of things, but because of this interview, or for the purpose of this interview, we'll just stick to the entertainment stuff, you know, you as a distributor and all that good stuff. Are you ready?
Fantastic.
Okay, great. So, what is a typical day in the life of Opeyemi Ajayi, the entertainment strategist?
Entertainment strategist.
You like it, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's truth is no day is actually the same, and it can range from reading scripts to visiting physical sites where building cinemas, to planning release of movies, to having an interview. So it's pretty dynamic, but I guess it's also a function of the goals and targets and things we set for ourselves as an organization. That sort of feeds into how the day plans out. And there's a lot of other operational things as well. People usually think that entertainment is really just about the glamour things. It's a lot of boring work, like finance, operations, logistics, supply chain. Because I mean, as you know, we have cinemas across 4 states in the country, and one outside the country as well in Cameroon. So supporting those cinemas and that operation is also quite a bit of work. So pretty much that's
A bit of fun, a bit of bore.
well, yeah.
Okay, so I and maybe the populace sometimes confuse the terms distributor and marketer. Are they the same or are they different?
I think marketer was used more in the days of DVDs and
Yes, you make a road on stuff like that.
But they go hand in hand because essentially they do almost the same thing under different frameworks and different structures. The distributor pretty much ensures that the film gets the right mileage in cinemas, which is the platform that's usually the first platform, and then onto other platforms, online streaming and airlines and so on and so forth. So essentially, the distributor's job is to ensure that films get the highest mileage and earn as much money, and many people see the film. So that also includes marketing. So in a way, they go hand in hand.
Okay, so before we started this interview, we had already had a conversation about marketing, distribution, and everything, and you had, pointed out the fact that what you do basically is distribution and exhibition. So my question now is, distribution and exhibition, of course, are a few of your specialties. Some people are familiar with the term distribution. What does exhibition mean and why is it important?
Okay, so let's talk about distribution, which is really getting the films out there. Exhibition specifically refers to cinemas.
Okay.
Running cinemas. So we have 11 cinemas across the country. So all cinemas are typically called exhibitors because they're the ones that exhibit the films. So it's a difference. It's different from distribution because it's a different part of the value chain. So it's at the exhibition point that the customer gets to see the movie. So the cinemas are exhibitors. That's the main difference.
That's the difference. Oh, okay. So what would you say is a priority in terms of strategy as a distributor?
Priority. So I think, most everybody thinks that the film is the next $1 billion film usually, But I think that a lot of focus really is on content. If you don't have a good content, no matter what strategy you put in place, you're not going to achieve the results that you're looking for. So the first thing is really about identifying the right content and the best, content available. And now we're also having to work with filmmakers even at the early stages to be able to create, the sort of films that will do well in cinemas and other platforms. One of the things I always say is sometimes, what's your intention as a filmmaker? Are you trying to make a commercial film? Are you trying to make a film for awards? Are you just trying to make a film for a cause? Whatever the case is. Sometimes identifying the reason why you're making a film can go a long way in determining what routes you should take and how you should go about promoting it. So for me, I'll say content is very important. I'll say that understanding what your intention is important because that feeds into the strategy. So obviously, if I use an example for a commercial film that you want to, a film made for cinema, you want to do a big premiere and make a lot of noise and promote the film, because it's also a form of marketing when you're doing massive premiere for films. Now, if you're doing a film that is for a cause or that is just an art film, you don't need that. It really depends on what your intentions are. But I'll say content, I'll say understand what your market is and what you're trying to do, understanding who you're trying to target as well. And that feeds a lot into what strategy or what route you take in terms of promotion.
Okay. So the film industry was hit real hard due to the pandemic, which was one of the causes of the influx of streaming services. How have you been able to manage after the lockdown?
I think so. For everywhere in the world, it's been a tough 2 years or so. And different cinemas have adapted in different ways. Some people have been completely shut down. In some of our cinemas, we have a strong F&B aspect rather than food and beverage. So in some cinemas, we got pizza, ice cream, and all concession items. So some were able to weather the storm with some of those initiatives. Obviously, it's not the same, and also not all locations. I think generally, we also didn't have it as bad as it was globally. So in Nigeria, we had Nollywood, which was able to sort of just keep things going. Not enough to be profitable, but enough to at least keep operations going. And I think that was very, very important. It was a very critical part of our whole ecosystem. The fact that Nollywood is also beginning to step up, as against 5 years ago where it was primarily Hollywood. I think what has then happened over the last, towards the end of last year, as cinemas opened up, we started to see growth and people coming back to cinema. Clearly, streaming took over the market in quotes for that period. But what we saw, particularly in the last quarter of last year, was an influx back into cinemas. So the film, and I'm talking both locally and globally. So Spider-Man released last year and crossed over $1 billion, and the top 10 film ever. So it reinforced the need and the theory that cinemas continue to be very critical in the life cycle of films because of the experience which you can't get at home and you can't get to the streaming platforms. So you also have studios like Warner Brothers who before had said, oh, we release films to cinemas and streaming. But after the success of Spider-Man, everybody's not saying, hey, you know what, this cinema window is important.
Still open,
because people still want to go out. The example I always use is that everybody has a kitchen in their house, but it doesn't stop you from going out to restaurants, to lunch, and to gather with your friends. So it's almost the same thing with cinemas as well. As long as there's good content, as long as there's content that people want to see, cinemas continue to do well. So we start to see an increase, and if you compare first quarter this year with last year, it's massive growth from last year. So I think we're in very good times as we even progress in the second half of the year.
Okay, so do you think that cinemas generally will become obsolete with the emergence of these streaming platforms?
No, I don't think so. I think that, like I said, I think that the need for people to see films together and the experience that cinema brings is totally different. So while it was just about content before, which is still driven by content, is now the experience. You have all sorts of technological upgrades in cinemas, from ScreenX to IMAX to reclining seats to film food. That experience you can't replicate. And as long as the movies continue to have an exclusive window in cinemas, you're going to see a rebound. I think we've gone full circle. Yeah? And by that, I'm saying at some point everybody felt, you know what, it was cinema or nothing. And then everyone else said, you know what, cinemas are dead. But I think we've come back to reality now to say, you know what, cinemas have to have the first, 12 weeks as the case may be. And I'm talking globally, global studios. So streamers will continue to be important. My personal opinion has always been that streaming works better for series. That's always been my thoughts. So you would probably stay on a subscription if there's a 3-month series that you're watching, and so there will be a lot more of that for streamers. And even in the patterns, you see that they're commissioning a lot of those sort of things as against movies. And the movies will continue to go to cinema. The biggest movies deserve to be
in cinema.
I have no doubt about that.
Okay. So during my research, I found out that in 2020, Genesis Cinema had introduced a drive-in cinema in collaboration with Play Network. Is that something that will continue, or is just a one-time thing?
No, it's a one-time thing. It was something we wanted to try out. It was a good experience. Commercial numbers don't really work, so it's not something. And at the time, cinemas were shut, so for us, it was something to do instead of just waiting for cinemas to come back on. So it was a good experience, but it's not something we're going to do consistently. Maybe once in a while, just an event, something different from traditional cinema, of course.
Okay, so can you say that there were some challenges? Because I know that pioneering anything in Nigeria can be very difficult. So can you say that it was because of certain challenges that you decided not to continue in that path?
It was never really meant to be a replacement.
Okay.
For cinemas. It was supposed to be an event that was different. It also worked because there were no cinemas at the time. But it has its challenges, which is, I think the main thing is how do you monitor admissions, how do you deal with piracy, and a lot of this content is sensitive content to the studios. So it increases the risk of, films being pirated and, so those are some of the things. Obviously, and the setup cost is also huge. To set up an outdoor cinema, it's quite significant to do that, and the logistics involved. So, like I said, it was never supposed to be a replacement for cinemas. It was just something to do
for the moment.
For the moment. Exactly.
Okay. So, what strategies do you, as a senior executive and entertainment strategist, I know you said you like that, what do you have in place to keep the cinema business thriving?
So, there's always new technology. Like I said earlier, a lot of us, so if I speak specifically about our cinemas, a lot of, we've introduced something called ScreenX, which is currently in Port Harcourt and will come into Lagos. ScreenX is a 270-degree experience that sort of gives you a truly immersive experience, whereby some of the images actually beams on the walls, so you feel like you're in the cinema.
Wow.
That currently is in Port Harcourt, and the feedback has been excellent. So we want to do a couple more in Abuja and in Port Harcourt, and in Lagos as well. And we need to continue to just expand the experience really for people. And I think that people will always appreciate the new experiences, new things. Critically as well, we're also getting involved more in the content side of the business as well, not driving it, but as co-producers, because we also think that we know clearly what people like and what people want to see in cinemas, and what and I think that we have a role to play, even if it's just provide direction in that area. So as long as we get the content right, as long as we get the experience right, as long as Hollywood continues to give the exclusive window, I think we're on for a really good run. The second half of the year is massive. There's Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever is what it's called. There's
Yes.
Thor, there is Avatar, there's Aquaman is moved to 2023, and then a number of really solid Nollywood movies as well. I think AY is in cinemas later this year. From Kakilele, I think is in cinemas as well. So there's a massive Jadays in cinemas later this year with 2 films. So it's a massive H2, you know, and we're really looking forward to it. And I think that people will enjoy the experience.
Nice, great stuff. So let's go on a quick break and we'll be right back. So, Mr. Opeyemi Ajayi, the entertainment strategist. I know you like that one, so I'll continue to use it all through this interview. So there has been an outcry by filmmakers on curbing piracy. What steps have you taken to control the menace? I mean, you had mentioned the fact that the drive-through was like kind of very difficult because of piracy. So what steps are you taking as a distributor to curb piracy?
So I mean, piracy is something that's very difficult to curb, even at a global scale. One of the surest ways to ensure films come to cinema first. I mean, however, the Census Board, I think, has done a good job sort of sensitizing people. There are times when we also put out information, because one of the things we realize is sometimes people they're not even conscious that, you know, they're doing anything wrong when they're buying pirated materials. So working with the Census Board, who has been very effective, we've, you know, continued to sort of, go after the guys who do the DVDs and even the websites that are, you know, that are illegal. But it's a very difficult thing to do. I think we just need to continue to sensitize people, and you know, hopefully people will, you know,
work with.
Well, I mean,
yes, because at the end of the day, I feel like it's a people problem. If you don't buy, partly a people problem.
Actually, mainly a people problem.
Yeah,
there's a demand for it. But
yes,
there's also the fact that there's not a strong enough distribution network. So if you release a strong film and there's demand for the film and all the cinemas are full, for example, you know, then it gives, if there are more cinemas, then it also sort of tackles the piracy problem, because we'll have an outlet to see it. But if there's no outlet to see it, then it gives rise to, you know, piracy. So there's another way to deal with it. It's really about creating distribution networks and putting the films even on the streaming platforms as well that are legal. You know, that's another way to deal with it.
Or to try. So aside from piracy, what other challenges are faced by distributors?
So I mean, logistics is massive, getting things around the country. From the exhibitor perspective, you know, setting up cinemas is hugely, very expensive, capital intensive. A lot of things are imported, so the costs with the rising dollar also affect operations. You know, from literally everything, almost everything that you think of. So that makes it very difficult, and you can't entirely pass that cost on to the customer. You know, if you start to sell tickets for 10,000, you're going to watch the film yourself. You know? But the reality is that costs have doubled in the last 2 to 3 years, from operating costs, from diesel costs, from everything. You know, so that is the problem that the entire country faces.
Yeah. So you earlier you had made mention of quality of content. What can you say about the quality of content in Nollywood?
I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. I think but if you look at it vis-a-vis the last 3 to 4 years, I think that there's on an annual basis there's been a lot of growth. I think that this year is the sort of films that are coming out this year, the second half of this year from Nollywood, are also really big. I think it takes us on an entirely new level where we can compete with anybody, anywhere in the world. That's the sort of level that Nollywood is going to now. So while there's still a lot of average and poor films, sadly, there are also a lot of really good films which we didn't have before. And that's also why cinemas are now showing even more Nollywood. So there was a point where you're showing Nollywood because you're more or less doing Nollywood a favor, in quotes. That's not the case anymore. You know, now the Nollywood films, a lot of Nollywood films will easily cross the 100 million naira mark, you know, and in some cases a lot more than that. So I think that this year we will see films that will do about 500 million in cinemas.
Oh, shake things up.
With what we're seeing coming. So it's massive, and I think we're all excited about it.
Okay, so you had earlier also said something about getting scripts, the boring parts you called it.
No, the script part's not the boring part.
You enjoy the script part.
Yeah.
So
if it's not a boring script.
so I mean, having to, that is basically what they call pre-production before the production, and that is also part of collaboration in my own.
Yes.
Yeah. So people always encourage collaborations in the entertainment industry. So give us the gist about how to go about collaborations.
Interesting. Well, I don't know if there's one way to do it.
Okay.
But what we can say is, you look at what has worked in the past, which is perhaps a distributor and a producer and, say, a comedian, for example, come together and make a film. One of the things we've seen that succeed is when people that have different strengths come together. So you have people who play in the comedy space or the music space who bring their fan base into the film industry and expands the industry, and everybody wins. So for us, it's really about what value can people bring to the table instead of trying to go alone. Nollywood is very big, but doesn't have the same commercial appeal as the Nigerian music space or the Nigerian comedy space. So usually when there's a collaboration, it brings a lot to life, and that we've seen that with a lot of the films that have done very well, in the cinemas and have, broken records. And also when, everyone who is involved has a stake in it, it makes a big difference.
Just makes there's a free flow. Is that how you mean? Free flow of maybe ideas?
Well, ideas, but also people bring different strengths to the table. I'll give you an example. Just a very old example. Many years ago, when Wedding Party released, I remember I was having a meeting with entirely out of the film space, and the person said to me, "Oh, there's a film in cinemas now, the film that has Ali Baba in it." It was interesting because the person didn't know anybody else. I mean, this is an older person.
Yeah.
He doesn't know all the actors. Doesn't even know the main.
Yes.
People, not main. The people who you would think that they will know. But
Yeah.
they know Ali Baba. Other people only know Banky W. And so sometimes when you have an expanded cast, it helps to expand your reach. And obviously that film was also a collaboration between, 4 parties as well. So they brought their strengths to the table. And it was one of the most successful films. I think actually the first time ever that the film was probably even bigger than Hollywood during Christmas. It was a big deal.
Wow. So as one of the leading cinema chains in Nigeria, I'm sure you have lots of producers reaching out for you to distribute their films. How do you select the films you distribute?
If I say something, I get myself into trouble. So we have a committee that reviews the films.
Okay.
But there are many other factors. Sometimes the films that you do because they don't quite meet the standard, but you need to give people a chance. You need to give people experience of what cinema is. But generally we look out for the basic things that everybody looks out for: the cast, the sequence, the sound, the entertainment value. And that's always very subjective because what I find entertaining is not what you find entertaining.
True.
So there's entertainment value. There's the entire beauty of the work. That we all look out for, and obviously, will this be worth our time, and will this be good for customers, and can the producer promote? Do they have funds to do promotion, which is very important. If you bring a film that is very good and you can't promote, nobody's gonna see it. So we have to know that you're also committed to promotion as well as us, the distributors, because it's usually a collaboration. So for us, those are all major things to look out for. But every now and then you do films that perhaps they're regional films, perhaps the films that that they're not going to tick all the boxes, but the person has potential, they need to learn, and so on and so forth. That happens. So.
Sometimes Nigerian films are released alongside top foreign movies like Hollywood blockbusters. How do you manage such situations in terms of returns?
So the way the industry has evolved, nobody gets an exclusive release in quotes. People are going to have to fight in quotes for their space, as the case may be, in the minds of the audience. Ultimately, what we try to do, and I'm talking now from the exhibitor perspective, generally in the industry, is give every film a chance. Clearly, there's some films that are stronger than some films, and everybody knows that. So if you're releasing an Avengers, everybody knows that. If you're going head to head with Avengers, you have to do something really special.
Yeah.
Our job as distributors is not to tell you not to go for it. Our job is to tell you, let you know what you're up against if you can go against it. Because what will typically happen is there's limited screen space. So if a cinema has 3 screens, for example, and there's an Avengers coming out, they're going to want to maximize those screens. So if they give the Avengers 5 shows, for example, they will give you 1 or 2 shows. Now, if the Nigerian film is able to make something very decent of that 1 show, then you get a better chance. But those sometimes are the indicators that determine how scheduling is done. But the big franchises will always get, the stronger head start. Also because there's a precedence as well, of those films succeeding in cinemas. So sometimes people say, "Oh, but you give them 5 shows, they're going to do better than us." You give them 5 shows because there was a demand for the 5 shows, and even before the film release, people are asking, when is this film coming out? Do you get what I'm saying? So you sort of feel the pulse, and even if you do a Google search, people are searching for this film and saying, when is this film coming out, and they're making inquiries. So it goes a long way to determine how scheduling is done. But then there's sometimes a dark horse, a film that nobody really saw coming, and it has 1 or 2 shows. And a good example would be AY's film, his first film, 30 Years in Atlanta. Back then, most cinemas didn't really give it a chance because everybody felt it was, nobody really thought it was anything special. But after the first week, come on, what's going on here? And then people start to increase the shows, and they stayed in cinemas for 12 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I think even more than 12 weeks then. So that's so pretty much is really about commercials. An exhibitor just thinks of, look, how can I make more money out of my space? Because at the end of the day, you have fixed overhead costs that your diesel supplier, your landlord doesn't care whether or not you're selling Hollywood or Chinese films, so you're renting it out to churches. At the end of the day, the point is that you have to cover your costs. So while I know it's a creative space, there's the business side of it that people tend to not really think about sometimes, and so we have to balance all of these things.
And that leads me to my very next question. Now, to the business side of it. How are distributors able to achieve a return on investments?
So it has to be from, when the films do well, distributors earn a commission. So the distributor is in his interest that the film does well, because his major income comes from his percentage on the gross sales that is made on the film. So a distributor is expected to be able to position the film properly, ensure that the film gets good times, ensure the film is released at as many cinemas as possible, and that way, that's the only way the distributor can make money. That's the only way everybody makes money. The distributor, the producer. So all the interests are aligned. It's really hard to make sure the pie is big enough. When distributors and producers are fighting, it's because they didn't make enough money. If everybody makes enough money, then everybody's happy usually at the end of the day.
And I have a question for that.
Okay.
Very good. What is the relationship like between the producers and the distributors? Because sometimes, like you have mentioned about percentage and stuff like that, we hear about squabbles that happen. So how are you able to manage such?
I mean, it's just like any other business. Sometimes you have disagreements, but usually the terms are clear from the beginning, and usually the expectations are clear from the beginning. So you have sometimes a distributor takes a certain percentage, and his job is really to ensure that the film is released across all cinemas and well positioned. Sometimes he takes a higher percentage because he's also investing some money in promotion. The expectation is that the film makes X amount, the distributor gets his money back, and then his percentage, right? So usually the problem is if the film didn't make enough money, then the distributor is not able to recover their investment, or the producer doesn't get enough money, and the producer has also spent money on this film. So again, like I said, the problem is usually when the pie is not big enough. Then it's now, it's your distributor's fault. It didn't make a good film. Well, I told you so. That. But the key, if the film makes money, usually everybody's happy. Usually.
Whenever there's money, everybody's happy.
Exactly. So that's.
So, Mr. Opeyemi Ajayi, what is your philosophy in life?
That's not an entertainment question.
It is.
I mean, I try to throw everything into everything I do. I try to be very committed into everything I do, regardless of whatever it is. I'm a big believer in continuing to build things. I know that sometimes in our country, everybody wants an immediate, success. But I'm a big believer in breakthroughs. But I believe that consistency over time is the most sustainable way to build anything. Whether it's your personal life or it's your business or it's your, I think consistency is extremely important. I think that it's also important that your word is your bond as much as possible. I think that people get to know you for who you are over time, over a period. So maybe one word is just consistency. In anything, just consistency. People know that you're consistent and people can sort of predict, certain things. I mean, you can't be too predictable. If people believe and the industry knows and people you do business with know that when you deal with this person, this is usually what happens. It always helps because then it builds trust.
Yes, people know what exactly they're going to.
Yeah, and they know you're not going to lie to them. You're going to tell them exactly as it is. It may be sometimes people want to hear lies. That's the truth. That's what I find out, particularly in this industry. People want me to tell them they're going to make 500 million. Everybody wants to hear that story. But I think over time, people are going to appreciate that. It is what it is. Paint the picture exactly as it is, and let's work for the best case scenario. But always paint the right picture.
So, what are your tips for aspiring filmmakers? I mean, you work a lot with films. So what are your tips for aspiring filmmakers and distributors?
So I think, again, ballers on consistency. I think that people should also learn and from the mistakes. What I find with a lot of creatives, both young and old, is, like I said, everybody believes that they've made the best film or they're the best at what they do. There's nothing wrong with that self-confidence. But if you make something that you think that this is the best thing that's ever been made and you put it in cinemas or you put it on a platform and the feedback is poor, take the feedback and understand why perhaps what went wrong, instead of thinking that everybody is bad, everybody is stupid. For them not, I hear people say like, oh, Nigerians don't appreciate
good movies.
So it sounds nice, it sounds elitist, but the truth of the matter is that you are still serving Nigerians, right? So and Nigerians are talking about not stupid because they also consume Netflix and Amazon and they know and they watch Hollywood as well. So I think sometimes what I always say is take the feedback, learn the lessons. I think also don't try and play in a space where you can't play in quotes. So for example, if you're trying to do, an example, if you're trying to do an action film, you have to do a really damn good action film because people are going to compare you with Hollywood.
True.
Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe if you're doing comedy, it may be different. It may not travel, but it may be different because comedy is always very local. Okay, but the key really is take the feedback. Don't take things too personal. I find a lot of people want to blame everybody else. It's either the exhibitor, or the distributor, or the regulator or something, And I'm not even denying that there are issues. There are always issues that everybody can always do better. Maybe your distributor could have done better. Maybe your exhibitor could have given you a better chance. Or maybe, those things are true, right? But sometimes maybe you could have made a better film too, right? Maybe your sound could have been better. Maybe your story could have been. Maybe your story was good, but it wasn't for this time. So they're different things. But if you go in with an open mind and this is a long-term play, you're very likely to succeed.
Okay, sir. What challenges should aspiring filmmakers and distributors be aware of, and how can they avoid, such challenges?
I mean, the major challenge really is just it's a very competitive market. You're competing against local products, you're competing against international products. You're selling the movies at the same price, the customer has to choose. So you have to continue to give the customer a reason to buy your product. And creatives have to also then think a bit more like business people. Okay, sometimes people don't really care. The average customer doesn't really care the technical details and all of those things. They just want a really good movie and want a really good experience. I think that's pretty much That's pretty much what I would say.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ajayi. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks for having me.
So that was another exciting episode of The Creatives, the entertainment show that takes you behind the scenes. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot like I did. And of course, if you have any comments or questions, please contact us on our social media platforms with #The Creatives. So from me, Doris Okori, and the entire The Creatives team, I'll see you next week with another exciting guest. Bye!